Recognizes Bryce and named first speaker for 6 minutes.
Recognize the state of Israel. Not only is Israel a bastion of democracy and a sea of fundamentalism and absolutism, but Iran is the darkest splotch of oil in this sea, and should not be given a chance to poison the nations around it. The Human Rights Watch have noted harsh crackdowns on freedom of speech and unwillingness to listen to international legal standards. Some examples of the terrible things Iran is doing in its own country is doing the death penalty for anyone insulting the Prophet and death penalty for apostasy. Apostasy being the renunciation of one's religion. What's even worse is Iran's state-funded terrorism in other countries, such as the funding of Hezbollah and other fundamental Islamic extremists. Hezbollah specifically calls for the destruction of Israel and the persecution of Jews and other religious groups in the Middle East that are not Muslims. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has grown to be a threat to the Lebanese government. To add on, Hezbollah has also claimed responsibility for multiple terror attacks in many countries, including U.S. embassies, all made possible by Iran. Iran's government is not only a cancer in the Middle East, but has produced catastrophes across the world stage, such as in Bosnia, where numerous terror attacks caused by the Iran-funded Hezbollah have taken place. Sanctions are important and necessary. The sanctions operate by restricting Iran's intake of certain resources, such as weaponry and important supplies, such as uranium. This will slow down Iran's military development and its development towards nuclear weapons. What I hope will be achieved with these sanctions is the mitigation of terrorism and the recognition of the State of Israel by the Islamic Republic of Iran. I believe the recognition of Israel by Iran is important because it could weaken Iran's hate for Israel, or at least show that Iran's terrible deeds will be softened. An example where sanctions have worked in the past is with Uganda, where sanctions caused the ruthless president of Uganda to lose power after less than 6 months of extensive tariffs and boycotts by the United States. I don't think the sanctions by us alone will be able to achieve these goals, but I believe it's a step in the right direction, and if we maintain these sanctions, then other countries may follow in suit and also make sanctions against Iran, which I believe would cause the goals to be met. It is with this I believe that the sanctions on Iran should remain in place.
Does the speaker feel that sanctions will serve to reduce the tensions between Iran and Israel?
Because, the sanctions will, overall weaken Iran's economy and, force them to eventually, have to give in to demands after a long time.
How does weakening the economy of Iran make them any less spiteful towards Israel?
I'm not saying they will they will hate Israel less. What I meant is that they won't be persecuting Israel on the world stage as much if we keep on harming them economically.
How does the speaker feel about these sanctions in this specific conflict?
I think you should go first.
No, first I was.
Oh, are you good?
Yeah. This start time.
Okay. In Iraq, we did make the government better than it was before. So it's not like we made the government worse than it was before.
I mean, there's also Guatemala and Nicaragua, pretty much name any Latin American country you want.
I think the fundamental issue here is that the United States is a close ally of Israel, and if they don't recognize Israel or respect its sovereignty, And we can't be allowing free trade with that country, allowing our private corporations and our public corporations as well.
Even still, sanctions are inefficacious in the sense that the United States, we bear the moral standard for the world. And the thing about economic sanctions, especially those of the economic sort, is that they attack the Iranian people and not the Iranian government. When the Iranian economy is strangled, those that suffer.
When you look at the Iranian government, it's almost entirely nationalized. So, in reality, the Iranian people themselves are suffering already under the nationalization of that government and the poor management in that country.
So, but this is just expediting that suffering. It's not like by doing this, everything stays the same. You're just furthering their suffering to people that
And this
already
isn't
suffer.
necessarily.
No pain, no gain is all I'm trying to say.
This isn't necessarily true. When you look at governments or economies such as those like Iran, the type of businesses and the trade that the Iranian people participate in, it's mostly small, like home, domestic good type economies. It's basic and not a formal economy in the way that we think of it.
And in that same vein, those domestic goods and those small household items are not being traded on a national scale. So in that sense, they really are internally trading. The people of Iran aren't really relying on massive imports from outside countries, particularly the United States. The Iranian people...
It didn't show that even with the sanctions that existed before, their economy was affected. It's not like they just exist in a microcosm. Things happen. They are a large oil exporter, so if we damage their main economy, that does affect the people.
Yeah, it could also be said that since they nationalized almost all their oil reserves, that means that they were already using a lot of it for themselves to begin with.
Also, we are a Christian country founded on Judeo-Christian values, and we can't allow a country like Iran to step all over Israel and its people and threaten them with nuclear weapons as they were developing in the past
I
years.
mean, if we're going to talk about Judeo-Christian principles, the foundation of Judeo-Christianity is proper relations with one's neighbors and loving another individual as yourself. And so,
As Iran doesn't. Iran threatens Israel. Iran threatens its neighbors.
Actually, inspections show that they haven't been working for...
We have a 5-second gentleman's rule.
Oh, okay. So Iran threatens its neighbors. It is a threat on a global scale. And if we don't keep these sanctions in place, they'll develop nuclear weapons.
Inspections show that they weren't moving towards nuclear weapons. They weren't moving towards anything violent. We had inspections.
Their president explicitly said that they wanted to make nuclear weapons until we made that deal with them in the Obama administration. So obviously the desire is there, and the political motivation, the military motivation is there. These sanctions are one of the few things keeping in place, crippling their government and their economy as a nation, preventing them from researching further.
and the thing about it is, when we impose these sanctions against Iran, the situation that we've done here, it's a similar tactic that was done during the Cold War. And the issue that arises in this situation is the idea of sort of proxy wars, if not military wars, an idea of politics and the economy. So obviously Iran has very strong relations with Russia already. And so even if the United States imposes sanctions on Iran, Iran has not as strong as of an incentive to comply with this. I mean, it's almost a show.
Well, it's a moot point, because there's nothing we can do about the relationship with Russia. Russia has always been involved in the Middle East, promoting violent action towards neighbors that are allied with the
So
United
as you
States.
said, it's a moot point. It's completely inefficacious to keep these sanctions in place that at their basis are really affecting the Iranian people. Iranian individuals that aren't going to have autonomy in the economy.
Speaking of proxy wars, Iran is involved in a proxy war with Saudi Arabia.
But this resolution doesn't talk about using sanctions to end proxy wars. It's talking about using the sanctions to force them to recognize Israel, which, as I said before, only increases tensions between the two.
Israel is part of this proxy war because they are in the Middle East.
Even still, at the end of the day, what would truly be the function of the Iranian government recognizing the state of Israel? I mean, currently, the Iranian government...
Recognizing the state of Israel would allow for diplomatic discourse between the two, and allow them to discuss on a global stage, opposed to
Even still, I mean, we recognize our enemy nations, but there's nations that we recognize that we don't discourse with. We recognize Cuba, we recognize North Korea, we don't discourse with either one of those nations. I mean, when we talk about recognizing a nation, it's really just a show. Like, for example, the United States does not officially recognize the state of Palestine.
regardless of the specifics of each state that we have recognized in our discourse with them, It would further open up relations between Israel and Iran, allowing
Would it
to
open up those relations if they're forcibly being made to do so because their economy is being crippled, as you say? You shouldn't use the word crippled.
Yes, it would.
It really doesn't make any sense when we look at the basis of this resolution. If our main end goal is the country simply recognizing the state of Israel I'll finish my thought. In the context of this resolution, keeping these sanctions in place simply for the function of Iran recognizing the state of Israel, which won't have that large of an effect anyways, I believe it's a moot point in the context of the resolution.
Alright, Shakon side's time has elapsed. How much time is the process?
We got 11 seconds if you want to say anything, finish up.
Yes. Why should we rely on Iran to promise that they won't develop a nuclear program? We thought that with North Korea, and they still developed their own nuclear program.
Alright.
And that's fine.
Alright, the time is elapsed.
And that we can't expect the country to rebuild themselves. I think a lot of the things you said have very much in common with Japan. We destroyed their economy, and now they're now they like us. Somehow. Same with Vietnam. It's not impossible for it to happen. And also, yes, even if making them recognize the state of Israel won't make them stop these attacks, it will, as I said in my speech, mitigate them more. Because it will show that because it will show that they can do whatever they want. If we have them forcibly recognize a state that they don't like, that they don't want to recognize, and that shows that they don't have as much power as they think. Okay.
Alright, thank you, speakers. I'm going to short for the remainder of his time, but now we're going to move into voting. So all of those in favor of the resolution resolve that sanctions aimed at Iran remain in place until that country formally recognizes the state of Israel. All those for, can you please raise your hand?
Pro?
Pro.
Okay.
Alright,
Hey,
You
you just disenfranchised me.
alright, all those against? And all those abstain? Alright, so with a vote of 2 pro, 3 con, and 1 abstention, this resolution fails. Alright, now we're going to move into best speaker voting. The way that's going to work today, we're just going to do it based on a show of hands. So if I could have all of the people who spoke today, please come up to the front.
Nolan's not here, so you can't vote for him.
Must be present to win.
Alright, please.
Yes.
I'm not made, and I'm going to try to subsequent. I don't have any other made.
Should I break down?
I want them all.
Alright, so all those in favor of Alan being best speaker?
Bryce.
Said my name.
You're voting.
Literally all. Alright, all those in
Well, I'm
favor
gonna
of
be
Tyler?
honest.
So, oh, it's okay, sorry. All those in favor of Bryce winning best speaker? And all those in favor of Nana winning best speaker? Alright. So, 3 votes for Alan, 1 vote for Tyler, 1 vote for Bryce, and 0 for Nana. Alan Jimenez is our best speaker. Congratulations. Alright,